say some would argue that, well, coincidence is possible, of course, on anything, but
Yeah.
to have coincidences pretty much of all the key features of the Titanic sinking, so much of it was matching. And, could there in some way, was it some sort of warning from nature or providence that, hang on a minute, put this
Wow.
story there, don't ever
Yeah.
call a new ship unsinkable, make sure you've got enough lifeboats. And it could have been, if people had viewed that,
Yeah.
if it was well known as a book at the time, they could have stopped the actual thing happening. Some people
Wow.
would say that it's more than coincidence, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Well, I'm 50-50. So I'm borderline on coincidence and premonitions.
Right.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, actually, I've got a rather unusual link to that. In the late 90s, I think probably 1999, 98, possibly, but around that time, I went, when I was married, we used to go to a few Titanic exhibitions down in Southampton. It's a very interesting subject. And in that one in about 1999, I actually met the a survivor of the Titanic, and she was the youngest child. She was a baby when it sank, and she survived, obviously. Her name was Millvina Dean, and she died in, I think, 2009, and she was 87, 88, something like that. So yeah, and people could go up to her and ask her things, and she was very sort of sprightly, I suppose is the word. Nearly 90 she was, although not then. She would have been about 80 then, because this was in about 1999, and she was a little bit snappy with people. So I asked her this question. I said, obvious. Well, it was more of a statement. I said, obviously, Milvina, you couldn't have any recollection of any of it. I was just really stating the obvious, but to say something. And she turned around and snapped at me, really. She said, "Young man," she said, which I was pleased her calling me a young man. She said, "Young man, it wasn't an incident," because I said, "Do you remember the incident?" She said, "It wasn't an incident, it was a terrible accident." And I felt duly reprimanded for saying that. But yeah, I've always felt it was quite something to have spoken to somebody who was in that awful accident.
Yeah.
Interestingly, if you go to the author of that book, The Titan, A
Right.
Wreck of the Titan, it was called Futility, but when Titanic sank, he changed the name of the book to The Wreck of the Titan, I suppose, to show the similarities. But he'd been a merchant seaman for years, and when asked about this, was it a premonition you had? He said, "No, I don't think so." He said, "It's like you said." He said, "I think it was coincidence." He said, "I've seen so many situations with ships and so on over the years of my career in the merchant navy." He said that I just put in stuff that in a way was always going to happen. He felt this was always going to happen, this kind of accident, because they didn't make ships unsinkable. You probably can't. Um, and so, yeah, he said, I think something like this would happen. He said there should have been enough lifeboats, but there wasn't. And he said on these ships, there usually were not enough lifeboats. So he himself said, no, it wasn't the premonition. So he would have agreed with you. But yeah, premonitions is a whole new subject on its own, really, because there do seem to be. I mean, we look at Nostradamus, who I think
Mm.
was a French philosopher in the 1600s, and they say, don't they, that they look at his predictions every year, and he's predicted the death of our queen, apparently, and COVID. But the truth of the matter is, I mean, I've read a couple of books on him, and I think his read a couple of books on him, and I think his language is very vague sometimes, so that you can almost twist it to say, oh yeah, this is a premonition. Who knows? We don't know whether some people can glimpse the future or not. Coincidence, though, Violet Jessop was a stewardess on Titanic, and she survived. She was also a stewardess on two of its sister ships, Olympic, which also sank, and Britannic, which also sank. So, coincidence, at least she survived three sinkings of major ships.
Wow.
And one final coincidence would be somebody called Tsutomu Yamaguchi, which is a Japanese man. He was a businessman on business in Hiroshima in August 1945. And you probably know what I'm going to say. He was there on business when, on the 6th of August, the atomic bomb was dropped by the USA.
Yeah.
And obviously wiped out a lot of people very sadly. But he survived that, badly shaken as they all were. So he made his way back home over the next couple of days to, and you may guess where his home was, Nagasaki. And on the 9th, just as he arrived, the second atomic bomb was dropped. I mean, we smile, not at the atomic bomb, but the sad coincidence of this man getting away from Hiroshima, having been shaken to the core by what had happened. And then he gets home, relieved to be home, and then another one comes down. At least those bombs, I guess, stopped effectively the Second World War. But yeah, that's quite a coincidence, isn't it, of somebody who can say, I was at both places when the atom bombs were dropped. So that was a bit grim. Okay, now we come to a few fun-filled facts. It's not easy to say that with a cup of drink. Right, okay, a few questions here, really. Which planet in our solar system rotates clockwise on its axis? Now, we've sort of covered this before. It's the only planet that does go the other way. It rotates on its axis clockwise. Do you know which one that is?
Is it Saturn?
Which one?
Is it Saturn? Yeah.
No, it's Venus.
Oh.
Venus. And the strange thing about Venus, you know, is that one day on Venus is quite a lot longer than 1 year on Venus. So,
Wow.
and I'll tell you why. Now, if you think of the Earth, 24 hours, we rotate once on our axis, you know, sunrise, sunset, etc. 24 hours is 1 day.